Ireland has a rich tradition of weird and wonderful creatures, but it's not just fairies and leprechauns. Some denizens of the Irish otherworld are truly horrifying, like these 10. Number 10. The Aparthek. Long before the Irish novelist Bram Stoker came up with Dracula, Ireland had the blood-sucking Aparthek. Once an evil wizard from the hills around Glenulin, Aparthek, a dwarf, was killed by his subjects and buried standing up. When he returned the next day demanding blood from their veins, his terrorized subjects had him killed again. But it didn't help. Aparthek kept coming back. In desperation, they sought out a hermit in the woods and asked him what to do. Aparthek is not really alive, he explained. He's one of the undead. In other words, he couldn't be killed. But he could be suspended if slain with a sword made of yew wood and buried in the earth upside down, sprinkled with ash twigs and thorns beneath a very large stone. Aparthek would stay there as long as the stone did, said the hermit. The rock is still there to this day, with the tree that sprang up from the thorns. Even now it's considered bad ground. Eerily, the most recent attempt to clear it in 1997 was thwarted by malfunctioning chainsaws as well as blood loss when a chain lifting the stone broke and cut one of the workers. Number 9. Banshees. Perhaps the best known ghoul from the Emerald Isle is a banshee, which in Irish means otherworld woman. Her wails and screams heard at night foretell a death in the family, but only if your family's Irish. Irish poet W.B. Yeats described the banshee as an attendant fairy that follows the old families, and none but them. More than one is considered an honor. The queen of the Banshees, Cleodna, was a goddess of love and beauty, accompanied by birds that cured illness, but she also lured sailors to their deaths. For this she was punished by the sea god. When she left the other world to be with her lover, immortal Maclear drowned her with a wave. Hence the legends in Glandore, County Cork, that a loud wave belongs to her. Number 8. Bananak. The Bananak are a type of shrieking female spectre drawn by combat to circle the skies over battlefields. They're kind of like banshees, and their name may have a similar root. If not just from ban, meaning white or pale, Bananak may come from bean or ban, meaning woman. In early Irish texts, they usually appear alongside their male counterparts, the Buchanaks. These demons of the air, as monastic scholars called them, more actively encourage the bloodshed of war. Based on their name, the Bocan, meaning he-goat, it's assumed they had a puck-like appearance. Number 7. Fomorians. In Irish mythology, there are basically two main factions. The good one, the Tuatha Dé Danann, and the other evil, the Fomorians or Fomors. The name is thought to derive from fo, meaning from below, and a suffix meaning the sea, demons or giants. Thought to have built Ireland's megalithic monuments, the Fomorians are said to have been the first Irish settlers, numbering 200 men and 600 women to begin with. But their prevailing characteristic is the mutant appearance, which they themselves see as a blessing from the dark gods. Mismatched limbs, animal heads, too many eyes, and so on are common. They're also wielders of old earthly magic, the power of Worm, which controls the weather and plagues. The king, Balor of the Evil Eye, had a flaming eye so huge that it took 4 men to lift the lid. With it, he can reduce a man to ashes and lay waste to whole regions, as he did to the islands west of Scotland. In fact, he was so dangerous that he kept 7 cloaks over it at all times and never got it out among his people. Whenever the time came to use it on an enemy, the cloaks would come off one by one, the removal of the first withering ferns, the removal of the second browning grass, the third heating up trees, and so on, until the removal of the last one set the land on fire. Number 6. Gorta. The Gorta, or hungry man, stalks Ireland during times of famine, begging from house to house for something to eat. His ancient origins are murky. According to some, he rises from the hungry grass, which curses anyone who walks on it to starvation. Others say the Gorta is the ghost of a man who starved to death close to a fairy mound. Whatever his origin, the wretched Gorta appears emaciated, dressed in rags with long dirty fingernails, and carrying, often dropping, an alms bowl. Unlike hungry grass, which you can burn, there's no way to destroy the Gorta. There is, however, a way to protect yourself. Compassion. Those who feed him whatever they can are thanked or rewarded for the favor, while those who don't, especially if they mock or worse yet attack him, are cursed with bad luck and starvation. Hence it's said that the Gorta has made kings into paupers and beggars into princes. However, he's always an omen of hard times to come. Number 5. The Fetch. A fetch, derived from the Old Irish faith meaning seer, is Ireland's answer to the doppelganger. Depending on whether you see it in the morning or the evening, it may bring good or bad luck, but mostly the fetch is a bad thing. Assuming the form of someone whose death is impending, this shape-shifting spirit appears either to them or their loved ones as an omen. What sets it apart from a regular doppelganger is the fetch's tendency to hint at the cause of coming death, showing burns of its fire, clutching its chest for a heart attack, etc. It also doesn't have a shadow. Needless to say, this all makes the fetch look rather terrifying. A fetch might also appear after death, walking among loved ones at the funeral with a distant look on their face. Apparently, if you follow one a while, it'll disappear in a dark corner or vanish behind a tree. Number 4. Slew. Slew are monsters with a taste for human souls, especially souls in true love. According to the ancients, Slew are fairies gone amok, warped and twisted without fear, reason or mercy. Later Christians explain them as the souls of sinners doomed to wander the land, dragging souls with them to hell. They're said to be especially active at Halloween, when all fires were traditionally forbidden so as not to attract their attention. But whatever day of the year it is, there's an old Irish tradition of keeping west-facing windows shut tight to keep the slaws at bay. Slaws also snare mortals as slaves, commanding them to do their bidding. If the slaws are denied a soul they crave, for instance, they'll get their slaves to slaughter cattle, sheep, and pets. This is because slaws themselves have no corporeal presence, typically appearing as an undulating shadow resembling a great flock of ravens. In fact, the word slaw means host. So feared was the slaw in times gone that people favoured death as their fate. Number 3. Dobhar Chu. Otters are impossible not to feel good looking at. They're basically the penguins of the Northern Hemisphere, and you can't help but smile when you see them, but trust Ireland to make them scary. The Dobhar Chu is a kind of otter from hell, a vampire with gargantuan fangs. It was first encountered on the shores of Glenade Lake in County Leitrim, lying fast asleep on the blood-soaked body of one Grace Connolly. At the sight of the creature, her husband, terrorist McLaughlin, ran home, got his gun, returned and shot the creature, which let out a terrifying shriek like a death rattle. In response, another creature emerged from the lake and had to be slain by the same man. Creepily, both Connolly and McLaughlin have carvings of the creatures on their gravestones. They weren't the only encounters, though. The Dobhar Chu, or Irish crocodile as it's sometimes called, has allegedly been in scuffles with others. It's also been seen and photographed as recently as 2000. According to photographer Sean Corcoran, who spotted the creature on Omiar Connemara, it swam across the lake within seconds, leapt onto a boulder, and gave the most haunting screech. Number 2. Olotheistiana. We've all heard of St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland, but what does the old legend actually mean? Well, scholars aren't exactly sure, but it may have something to do with a breed of giant worm-like monsters. Likened to dragons, Olotheistiana are so massive that their snaking around carves rivers into the landscape. The river Shannon is said to have formed this way, left in the wake of an Olothist fleeing St. Patrick. Otherwise, they're said to bide their time in deep lakes, underground caverns, and especially marshes and swamps. Even their blood is toxic, hence when the healer of the gods, Dian Sech, removed 3 of them that had been growing inside a baby's breast, he burned them to ashes and cast them into a river. But even then, the river stopped flowing and the water turned back, killing everything in it. Another tale has one crawling from a witch's broken thigh bone, growing full size and then devouring Ireland's cattle. The warrior Conan leapt into its mouth to slay it from within, but its blood forever stained the lake red. Number 1. The Duleekahan. Long before the legends of Sleepy Hollow, Ireland had its own headless horseman. The Duleekahan, meaning dark man, is a black-robed decapitee, a harbinger of death, who thunders through the night on horseback using a human spine as a whip. Alternatively, he might ride his enormous black coach, the coach bower pulled so incredibly fast by 6 headless horses that it sets the roadside ablaze. Traditionally, the Duleekahan is a manifestation of pagan fertility god Crom Dubha, whose sacrificial blood rites involve decapitation. He keeps his head close to hand despite its resemblance to a lump of moldy cheese. By holding it up, the Duleekahan can see for miles around the countryside in his midnight pursuit of the dying. It also serves as a lantern, its decaying phosphorescence enough for his vision. All gates fly open for the Duleekahan, locked or not, so it's no use resisting. You don't want to be too eager, though. Folktales abound of those who watch from their windows for a glimpse of him, only to get blood in their eyes.